Proper planning prevents poor execution, and that is the current phase for the Houston Texans offense. Nick Caley knows it's just made, it's just OTAs, but it's the early stages of a new look, a new offense. Lock in on today's Locked On Texan podcast. We are talking Caley control.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Battle Red Nation, from H-Town to your town. This one is for Texan fans all around. I'm John Hickman. I put the H in H-Town Texans Talk, your credentialed media member and Texans football analyst. Thank you for making the Locked On Texans your first listen of the day. Today's pod is all about Nick Caley and the early conversation surrounding the Texans' offensive identity and the CJ Stroud worry meter. Reports from Aaron Wilson. The Texans are taking precautionary measures for CJ Stroud as he is currently dealing with a tight shoulder muscle. For all of our newcomers, the Locked On Texan podcast will be going from 5 shows a week to 3 shows a week starting on Monday. Don't worry, though. We got something that is brewing special over here. Monday will kick off the Rookie Diary series, so make sure that you return for that pod, opening up with Jaden Higgins, and that will have a Jaden Higgins episode and the Jalen Noel episode. Will have a special guest on, a guy that can do a much better job of telling you about those young men than I can, so make sure you stick around for the Rookie Diary episodes of the Locked On Texan podcast, but 3 shows a week, starting on Monday until we get to about mid-July. Shout out to all of our everydayers from the Himalayas. I appreciate you guys coming back. Before we get into the Nick Caley press conference after yesterday's practice, here's a little news coming out of Friday OTAs, and I want to give a shout-out to all of the Houston Texans media members. Titus Howard and Blake Fisher seem to be locking up their spot on the right side of the final 5, and I'm going to continue to call that offensive line, I'm going to label it the battle for the final 5, right? And Howard has reportedly looked bigger, adding on some extra pounds. Tomlinson and Juice Scruggs competed at left guard. Kind of makes you wonder a little bit, just like if Jared Patterson can't beat out Andrews, who started with the ones again at center, then will he be a depth piece, or will Houston look to move on from him? And he doesn't have like the same draft stock that Juice Scruggs. Houston traded up for Juice Scruggs, right? Jared Patterson was a later round pick, and if he can't find a way to get on the field as a starter, I'm inclined to believe that he's not going to be able to really compete at guard. Though I could be wrong, and the Houston Texans offensive line, they're not playing with pads right now, so this is all kind of technique, I believe, and preference. But when we get down to putting on some pads and being able to hit some of these guys, which Nick Caley talked about, that things could change. Will Anderson had another great day. Keep in mind, again, no pads are on during this period. A rookie wide receiver, Jaden Higgins, caught a deep ball from Davis Mills for a tutty. Davis Mills is probably telling CJ, hey, man, stay out as long as you need to. I'm trying to get to New Orleans. So shout out to Davis Mills continually making plays for the Houston Texans. Now, after practice, the media had time to speak with Nick Caley and had an opportunity to talk about his stamp on the offense and what is the Nick Caley offense. So that is where we're going to start today's show.
Yeah, I think everything, to answer your question, really it's not my stamp specifically. It's what suits the strength of the guys that we got. So I think we're in the discovery process through phase 2, and we get to work with them on the field, get an opportunity to see the different skill sets, the different routes, the different schemes that we could potentially deploy this year. So it's really an evolving process, and this is the time to really kind of put the rubber on the road and see what we can do and evolve from there.
I love that message, man. This is why Nick Caley can kind of sell you on what his offense is going to be. I saw DJ Bittemy, ESPN, in front of the show, said, if you close your eyes, I believe it was DJ, if you close your eyes and just listen, or it could have been John Alexander, so please forgive me. But if you close your eyes and listen, he sounds like Sean McVay, his former coach, which is a good thing in terms of the presumed production we'll see from this offense. But the one thing that is consistent from Nick Caley, from the first time we had an opportunity to hear from him to now, and I think this is going to be something that he continues to preach, is just centered around this is no matter anytime we talk to him, his emphasis on the different schemes that this team were, deploy. And the media also had an opportunity to ask him what is a Nick Caley offense, and I believe that was Brian Bearfield who asked him that question. This was his response to that.
Well, it depends on the players we got, and that's not a cop-out. That's the reality of it. So it can evolve, be willing to change and do whatever we need to do that's necessary based on who we have and who we're playing. Whether that's, again, you want to get big in terms of multiple personnel or not, gap schemes or zone schemes, committing to more play action or not, that's going to really be dependent on, what your personnel dictates and who you have available. So again, that's the great part about this year is we get to do a lot of different things and really put a lot of guys in different positions to run certain routes, some of them which some of these guys have never done anything, or certain routes that we have, and they might be just exclusively outside receivers that we're working inside and vice versa. So it's a good opportunity just to see what these guys can do.
And he's so open. He's so open with what his plans are and what he wants to do. But like I said, the consistent theme with Nick Caley is different schemes the Houston Texans will deploy. Players playing to the player's strength, which is, one of the things that I believe hurt the tight end unit in their production and their contribution to the offense in 2024. We're going to build our scheme, deploy different schemes to see what fits us. And I don't want to overlook us because for me, us screams – I think us is an indication on himself as a play caller. What Nick Caley doesn't want to do based off of the times that we've heard him speak is he doesn't want to put himself in the box to where I only have, as we talked about it with Bobby Slug so many times in 2024, I have a script of plays. And in my first 10 to 15 plays, this is my script. No matter what the defense is giving us, I have a set of plays that I'll run. I don't believe that's going to be Nick Caley in his offense, especially as the offense starts to really build and evolve into what the strength of the team is, right? And honestly, when you look at the strength of the team right now, you have a guy that big, fast, tall, can box out cornerbacks, and Nico Collins. Houston did a very good job until the injuries of last year of kind of operating underneath. And so what did the Houston Texans do to kind of help with that scheme, to kind of help with the build of the offense and the roster? They went out and duplicated it. They went out and got Jaden Higgins. They went out and traded for Christian Kirk. They went out and brought in Braxton Berrios. They went out and got Justin Watson. They went out and drafted Jalen Noel. They went out and did some things that are similar. They brought in guys that are similar to what helped the Houston Texans offense last year at different points of the season. And so that's going to help with the overall identity, of course, replicating and duplicating rather what helped the offense look good and produce. However, what the Houston Texans will get from him is a guy that is going to look at what is the defense currently showing us? What is the trend of the defense during this drive, during this quarter, during this half? And then, of course, looking at film in game preparation. So when we look at what's the Caley's offense and, what his stamp will be on the offense, I think it'll be allowing for freedom. Like, let's not operate in terms of the scheme and being bound to a scheme. Let's operate more so in terms of freedom. And guys, patience is going to be key to get this offense to where a lot of Texas fans want it to be, right? And I can understand why people are concerned with CJ Stroud being out during this period, but I can't wait to talk about that. I believe it's an overreaction, but without the freedom of adjusting, kind of being, doing things on the fly, then we'll see the Houston Texans kind of repeat the same errors and issues of last year. But that's the beauty of a guy coming in with a fresh mind, a beauty of a guy that's being employed for the Houston Texans that has a great background and has great references. Yeah, Sean McVay, also Josh McDaniels. Like, that's the beauty of having a guy that has all of these things in his mind, because I believe that once we are able to kind of start hitting guys, we're going to see that really impact the offensive line. We're going to see that really impact the playmakers. That's something that Nico Collins highlighted when the media had an opportunity to talk to him. Like, he's a playmaker who likes to get playmakers the ball. Calling your new OC or playmaker, that is a blessing to have. But overall, patience is key. Patience is key not only for the play calling, but also in terms of, just the offensive line units they're going to put out there. We have more talk, OTA talks, more Locked On Texans when we come back. Just talking about Nick Caley, his impact on this Houston Texans offense, and why patience is key. For my NBA fans out there, stay patient. We are almost at the finish line. We are almost at the NBA Finals. The Knicks could pull a comeback. Indiana could close it out. However, the NBA playoffs have been amazing. Every night, every performance, every playoff series, it seems like there's another highlight-worthy performance, another major momentum shift, or just a can't-miss moment. And whether it's a game-winning shot or breakout players just stepping up when their time is called, there's never been a better time to get in on the action than now. And FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. And also with FanDuel, it's all about kind of looking at the trends, right? All about looking at to see who's heating up. And if that player is heating up, if those player props are starting to become favorable, then why not back it up with a same game parlay? Or how could $200 of bonus bets add to the excitement if your first $5 bet hits? This is what FanDuel is offering. And if you are new to FanDuel, it's a perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 of bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Going into training camp?
Yeah, I think it's like anything else. I don't think anything's going to be solved here in the next 2 weeks, okay? But it is obviously a progression. There's things in this time of the year with not having pads on. We can't hit gap double teams. We're not going to come off the ball and capture zone combinations as much. When you get into training camp, a lot of those things come to life, which obviously carries over into the play action game. Your play passes on early downs and passing off picks and stuff like that. So it's a little bit more of a controlled environment. But we're certainly going to build off everything we do and continue to build up until the time we report back here. Go ahead, I'm sorry. No, I think that, again, it's like anything else. We're going to continue to build our scheme as we get into the season. The season's a long ways away from now. So all honestly we're focused on is trying to get better every single day, deploy the different schemes that we want to try to experiment with, see what fits us. And we'll see. I know this. We have a good staff. We have good players here. We have good guys that love football, and we're just trying to grow every day. I'm not worried about what's going to happen in September, honestly. I'm worried about just trying to get better every single day here.
Those are your words from first-year offensive coordinator Nick Caley, again being brought over from the LA Rams, spent time with the New England Patriots. And again, like I mentioned, like his message is consistent and clear. I'm going to work towards the player strengths. It's going to be different schemes. We're going to have different looks, and the importance of getting all of that kicked off in OTAs is, essential to the success of this offense. And this is a team that, they extended Dalton Schultz last year after he had a very good first year with the Houston Texans. And of all of the players that I believe were impacted the most from last year's I don't even know, disaster class of an offensive season. I would look at Dalton Schultz, and you can make the argument that aside from CJ Stroud, who obviously is number one, right, in terms of how the offensive scheme hurt him with pass protection, with those guys just being completely out of whack and him getting hit, sacked over 50 times and getting hit more than that, right? You can make the case for maybe the interior offensive line, right, as a unit. But Nico Collins still performed. Nico Collins missed 5 games and still hit 1,000 yards. Obviously, he was favored heavily in this offense. Stephon Diggs was en route to be a 1,000-yard receiving season, to have one of those seasons. So he still was a major part of the offensive success. Joe Mixon was still a guy that, even with the amount of times he was in the backfield, still was a player that benefited from the pecking order on this team offensively. Dalton Schultz was a player. Now, we will point to the lackadaisical effort in terms of blocking. the lackadaisical effort in terms of fighting through contact. There's a lot of things that we can point towards to Dalton Schultz and say, well, this is what you were doing. But if we put up a bullet point, I can be fair to say, even with my criticism of Dalton Schultz was not put in the most favorable positions to succeed based on his skill set. And this is why, and I'm not saying that he's going to for sure make the team. I don't know how the Houston Texans front office feel about him right now, and that could change from May to the end of August. A lot of these things can change. But the fact remains is Houston is banking on some rookies to be major contributors to this offense. Christian Kirk, a good vet. However, he's had his issues in terms of being able to stay on the field. And no front office is going to look at their best player, one of their best playmakers history, and not keep that in mind. And what I'm saying is, we love Nico Collins. We know 12 is out there, but he's missed games. Like, anytime you ask anybody, what do you want to see from Nico Collins? The only thing that everybody wants to see is a complete season from Nico. And by the way, if he would have missed those 5 games last year, he's definitely looking at an all-pro season. And who knows the type of numbers he would have put up. I've talked about it in the past, like when Nico went down, he was a huge percentage of this offensive output in terms of yards. So he still benefited. Diggs still benefited. Tank started to come along. Joe Mixon still benefited from the offense in the pecking order. But when I get to Dalton Schultz, 88 targets in 2023, 35 first downs, missed 2 games. In 2024, 85 targets, 26 first downs. He's a guy that I believe was impacted by being asked to do things that he's never been good at. It's not about the comfortability level, because if you're not good at it, then you're not comfortable doing it. Dalton Schultz is a soft zone finder, in terms of, attacking a defense. He's not a guy that you want to have lined up to block edges, and then you're wondering why pass protection is horrible. Dalton Schultz is a guy that makes plays for you in the seams. Dalton Schultz is a player that can make a play on the outside in terms of, finding a way to get in between that second and third zone level of a defense. He's not a guy that you want to go out there and, honestly, disappointing or not, be a chip blocker, right? That's who Dalton Schultz is. In 2024, all of the good things that Dalton Schultz can bring to an offense after Houston just signed him to an extension, they kind of minimized it and sometimes threw it out the window and wanted him to do things that he has not been good at throughout his career. That should change. That's why I look at Nick Caley and I hear the words that he says when he says things like playing to the player's strength. That's been a message from day one. Deploy different schemes to see what fits us. And again, like I mentioned in the first segment, when I look at the word us, I do believe that's an indication on, as a play caller, I am not going to ask us to do things that we're not good at. And so when you get to looking at an overall view of things, you have to get to the individualism of it. And Dalton Schultz is a player that you do not want to ask him to do X, Y, and Z if you know that it'll hurt us in the long run. And that doesn't fit us when we're trying to move the ball, when we're trying to score points, when we're trying to have a balanced offense that can continue to sustain drives and not be 8th in the NFL in terms of punts per game. All of these things take time. Patience is key. But this is a player, this is a play caller, that obviously has the thought process of, I got to look at what helped Houston last year, because I'm still going to be working with these players. I'm still going to be out there with these players. I got to coach them up. And one of the things that I made a point of, and I continue to make a point of throughout the year, is, Jerry, I need for you to figure it out with him too, man. I need for you to figure it out with Cade Stover, because Nick Caley has a lot of good things to say about Cade Stover, a young man going into his second year. Obviously, he's going to be a playmaker. That what is his role and how can he be beneficial to this offense and how our offense that we'll deploy maybe have a package for him, maybe have a set of plays for him that we can count on him to make a play here because he fits what we're trying to do on this drive and on this play against this defense. Not he's going to fit what I want to do. That is the biggest difference that I think we'll see between Nick Caley and the offense moving forward for 2025 and above and beyond, and the last 2 seasons under Bobby Slowick. Now, no matter what, Nico, Dalton, K, what matters is who's going to be throwing those guys the ball. For some people, it's an overreaction period. Why isn't CJ Stroud out there when this is the early stages of trying to put this offense together? For some people, no need to overreact. CJ Stroud is still out, so we'll talk about that and more to close out today's show. Thank you for making the Locked On Texans your first listen of the day. It's Saturday, so enjoy your weekend right after you listen to the Locked On Texans podcast. But for your second listen, before you start to run your errands, check out Locked On NFL Scouting. As training camp gets closer, OTAs is happening right now. Moves are still being made. The NFL offseason is still fun and popping. Host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this off season. So, of course, you want to know what the Houston Texans are doing. You come to the Locked On Texans. But what if you want to know about the Jags? What if you want to know about the Bills? What if you want to know about Miami? What if you want to know about what's going on in the NFC? Locked On Scouting has you covered. Find Locked On Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Listen to what first-year offensive coordinator Nick Caley had to say about putting more on CJ Stroud's plate.
CJ said that he's going to have a little bit more on his plate at the quarterback position than maybe he'd had his first 2 years. What kind of goes into that, and what sort of things maybe be on his plate that previously he hadn't been asked to do?
Yeah, I think it's like anything else. The more you can do, the better off you're going to end up being. And he wants to have the ability to be able to have control. And when you're at that position, there's a lot of great value in being able to fix problems that come up or unscouted looks that come up. And it doesn't happen overnight. That's for sure. And it's repetition. It's comfort with the offense. He's working hard. He's done a good job. And we'll just keep growing that.
That was a great response from Nick Caley. And let me get to this point, man. The scheme don't work. The offense don't work without CJ Stroud being out there, right? It don't work without CJ Stroud being the best version of himself. But to get over the hump, it will not work without CJ Stroud and Nick Caley being on the same page in terms of understanding what the look is and understanding the branch of plays that could defeat the defensive look for that series or that play. Like elite quarterbacks, when you look at the elite of the elites, not the guys that we really like, right? And again, Nick Caley's background, he's coming from the greatest to ever do it to arguably a top 2 gunslinger of all time in Matthew Stafford. Processing and having a quarterback that you trust that can do more and a quarterback that wants to do more and that is willingly taking on more, that goes together for one good reason, or a lot of reasons, a lot of good reasons, but one good reason. What is the front right now, CJ? Okay, that's the front. What's the look right now? Where's the mic right now? Okay, what's the defense? Okay, what coverage are they in? Okay, cover 2, cover 4. Yeah, it's cover 3. Okay, you got to cover. Okay, what is it? And being able to process all of that, and also saying, Coach, I know this was the play, but we either have a set of plays that we can use to check into to defeat this defense, to move the ball, and also, you know, what makes a quarterback elite? You know, timeout. Let's reset. But I think why it's not a big deal for CJ Stroud to be out there. And again, the reports Aaron Wilson reported Friday that CJ Stroud right now, he is out with the shoulder soreness. Shoulder tightness, excuse me, in the muscle. That is the mental aspect of the game. And I was looking at CJ Stroud's shoulder history. 2021 at Ohio State, it was revealed that Stroud suffered an AC joint sprain in his right shoulder during the season opener against Minnesota. Despite that, he continued to play, sat out a week, came back. 2023, leading up to the week 2 game against the Colts, Stroud was listed questionable due to a right shoulder issue, was limited in practice. He played through that injury, completed 30 of 47 passes for 84 yards. Last year, I believe it was against the Baltimore Ravens where CJ Stroud, and that was late in the season, CJ Stroud got hit pretty hard, came down on pretty hard, and that shoulder started to give him a little issue. So I do believe it's a precautionary thing for the Houston Texans in terms of protecting the player, in terms of giving him time. So when he gets out there, he's ready to go. But I don't have a worry for CJ Stroud not being out there because the pads are not on. I'm not too big on overreacting to the T-shirt Olympics, but also mentally is where we all want to see the biggest difference from CJ, right? Like I've seen the comments on YouTube. We want to see CJ, take on more, be able to call audibles. That was one of the things that former co-host here on the Locked On Texans podcast, Brian Bearfield, mentioned, right? He was adamant about that, especially considering a new offense. He's going to be the guy that's going to be here consistent. Whether Nick Caley is here, but Bobby Slowick is here. CJ Stroud is the consistent. So mentally is where I look at CJ Stroud and I see, okay, he wants to have more on his plate, which is a good thing. And I ask Texas fans out there, are you concerned that CJ Stroud isn't throwing at OTAs? Got 110 votes. 74% of you guys said no. My man Rockets 2026 champion said, if you say yes, then you're an idiot. It's voluntary, has nothing to prove to anybody. Be happy he's even in the mix and not on a podcast tour. You guys did not like the podcast tour. Marco takes, if what Nick and D'Amico have been saying about CJ being in the lab all year, all offseason is true, then really isn't a point for him to participate at OTAs except for being the leader and just being there. He will get plenty of practice soon. Just my thoughts. And so I agree with that, man. Him being out there not throwing is not a big deal yet. We haven't even got to June 10th. No pads are on right now. They can't hit nobody, right? And again, CJ won't get hit anyways. But you look at why hitting is important, why being able to be hit and get hit is important, because that's going to determine how your offensive line it really is. Because you'll be going up against Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson. Will Anderson continues to get better and better. You'll be going up against everybody else can get hit. Everybody else can get touched. So that's when it gets important. But the mental aspect of year 3 for CJ Stroud is what really matters, because in order for Nick Caley's offense to work, he's already mentioned we're going to have a multitude of offensive schemes. We're going to do a multitude of different things. Things will change. In order for the offense to work, my quarterback needs to know when things need to change, right? My quarterback needs to know, right now I got a too high look. This is the play. They're aiming to take that away on this down to distance in this situation. I got 3 more plays that I can just check into. I can check out of this. I can audible to something else. And with the playmakers that I have on the field, they know what they need to do. I know what they need to do. And we were able to kind of compete against his defense, to combat whatever this defensive scheme is. That's why the mental aspect of it is so important. Because if things need to change on the fly, unlike last year where it was a script, it was a set of plays, it was Bobby Slowick's way or the highway, so to speak, can change. And not being able to change, again, I mentioned last week, hurt Houston, earlier this week maybe, hurt Houston in the second half of games where they were not able to score points, which forced the defense to be out there more, which forced a potential top 5 defense to sink down to middle of the pack, 8th in the league in punts, because we were not able to change. So if you're able to change now, Your quarterback needs to mentally be able to do that, and that is where we're going to start to see CJ Stroud kind of not rely so much on his own physical ability, but he'll start rising as a quarterback in terms of his mental ability. And it's there, guys. CJ Stroud is really the total package. More Locked On Texans starting on Monday. Again, remember, we're going down to 3 shows a week. Monday, we'll kick off the Rookie Diary series featuring Jaden Higgins is who's going to kick it off, right? I can't wait to do that with you guys, talk about Jaden Higgins with you guys. That's going to be fun. We got more Locked On Texans, more covering of the OTAs, more Houston Texans talk here on the Locked On Texans podcast. Peace. Enjoy your weekend.